All right, guys, are you ready for a tell-all? Because I am going to be sharing my homeschool experience, the good and the bad, what that was like, what I think of it retrospectively looking back. Hello, this is Rachel from 7 in All. I am a second-generation homeschooler, and I've recently had some viewers ask if I have any regrets about my homeschool experience and what I would have maybe changed or done differently, which really got my gears turning, as did watching my friend Christine from This Homeschool House. She recently made an excellent video on this topic. So if you want to hear from another second-gen homeschooler and her reflections, I'll link to her video below. She had a different experience than the one I had, and I think it can be very valuable to hear from different adult homeschoolers. So I hope that hearing this story time video and reflections video will be helpful for you if maybe you're in the early days of homeschooling, or maybe you haven't even started yet, but you're considering homeschooling your kids. I think it can be very helpful to hear from adults who were homeschooled. And so I hope that this is helpful and gets you thinking about what homeschool might look like for your family and what kind of legacy you want your homeschool to have. So let's dial back the time machine to the early 1990s when I started being homeschooled. Now, when I say I was homeschooled, I truly mean I was homeschooled. I never went to school. I never went to public school, private school, never really had any academic outside classes at all. So when I say homeschooled, that means from preschool through 12th grade graduation, it was me and my mom and my siblings at home learning. You will hear many homeschoolers today that had different hybrid models or co-ops. We didn't have any of that. We didn't do basically any of that. We had almost no outside lessons. It was homeschool. And I would say that my family had a pretty traditional approach to education. You know, get out your books, do your work, take your tests, read your books, do a good job. A pretty traditional, rather rigorous, I would say nerdy approach to homeschooling. So where my mom started out with homeschooling was when I was 3 years old. She went to a homeschool conference. She was already pretty interested in homeschooling, and she bought her first preschool curriculum, and she was all excited, and she sat down to do it with me, and she found out to her chagrin that every subject that the preschool curriculum was telling her to teach me, I already knew. And so it would like tell her to teach me the days of the week. And I'm like, oh, you mean like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you know, all those things? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I know that already. So she found out pretty early on that teaching me would be its own interesting roller coaster adventure. And it was because I am a more gifted learner. I actually did a lot very independently. Not so much family style learning, very book-based learning in the early years with my homeschool experience. So when I was a young child, we lived in rural Michigan, and we would get our schoolwork done in the morning. I'd wake up early, I'd get right to my books, work on my schoolwork, and we'd spend our afternoons running around in the farm and in the woods and building things out of sticks and doing all the things farm kids did back then. It was glorious. It was honestly, I would say, an idyllic childhood. It was a great childhood, what my parents were able to give us, and I loved my homeschool experience. Now, our family went through several major changes. We went through several major moves. I ended up living in 3 states and then one foreign country during my growing up years. And to me, one of the huge benefits, you know, as our family was moving to follow my dad's job, one of the huge benefits was that we were able to take our school with us. Because I think one of the things that can be very stressful to kids, preteens, teens, when a family has to make a move is that they're starting all over with interruptions to their education. They have to start in a new school. They have to make new friends, get to know new teachers, get to know a new system. I think one of the huge benefits for our family was, yes, we had all those transitions. Yes, we had to start over and make new friends, but our education stayed the same. And that was a constant and something very consistent in spite of huge and major changes and learning how to live in new places. That has been something that retrospectively I am very grateful for, because I've known other kids with similar lifestyles that have had to move a lot, and they I think, felt a lot more of the struggles with changing schools. I'm very happy that homeschool allowed us to have some consistency through those huge moves. Then friends. People always want to know about friends. Like, how are homeschooled kids going to make friends? And they often seem to think that if you're homeschooled, you need to look for other friends that are homeschooled. And being homeschooled in the 90s and early 2000s, I would say we had very few friends that were homeschooled. Now, I don't mean we had very few friends. We had very few friends that were homeschooled. In Michigan, we did know some other families that homeschooled. In Kentucky, we knew 0 people that homeschooled. In Texas, we knew 0 people that homeschooled. And then we moved overseas. So where were our friends coming from? They were coming from church. We went to church. I was involved in youth group as a teenager, had a lot of friends from church groups. Also just from the neighborhood. So some of my lifelong friends, we met them because they were playing badminton on the street, on this dead-end road where we lived. And so we went out and joined them for badminton. Some other really good friends of ours, they lived right across the street from us and they went to school. So as soon as they came home from school every day, then they'd run over to our house and we'd be all ready to play because we'd finished our schoolwork hours earlier, and we'd play with them as soon as they were out of school every day. So we had friends. They were mainly not homeschool friends, but from the neighborhood, from different groups that we were part of, from church, or places where we were, our family was connected. So yes, we had friends, and some of those friends, have remained throughout my whole life. Now, I have moved a lot, and that I think does make it harder to maintain long-term friendships, and I've been very grateful for social media and the role that that plays. But also, who are some of my best friends are my siblings, because I took them with me throughout my whole life, and to this day, these are the people that are emailing me saying, hey, can you look over my resume because I'm going to be applying to a new job? Or these are the people that are sending my child a Star Wars Lego book in the mail because they heard that my son is super into Star Wars Legos. And we're the ones trading baby clothes back and forth and all of this. So truly growing up and having my siblings as part of school my whole life, spending our days together doing school, did, I think, for us, give us a very strong relational foundation. We know that we are the first people that each other can count on. So I think we would pretty much all consider each other best friends. They are the ones that are going to hear my news first, whether it's sad news, whether it's great news. We share all that with each other. We have family chats, as many families do to this day. So that's something that should not be ignored, is the friendship power of siblings as well. So not all your friends have to come from a homeschool background. We had quite a variety of friends, but I also retrospectively think about how homeschool played an impact in my own sibling relationships just through time, because I'm older than all my siblings, and there's some pretty big age gaps, so quite a bit of them are in different life stages from me. But, I was there in high school when they were learning their ABCs in kindergarten, and I have those memories of them. And homeschool allowed us to be together much more than we ever would have been given the age gaps in our family. Next, outside lessons. So today you'll hear a lot of homeschoolers doing a whole bunch of extracurriculars or outside lessons or having tutors or having co-ops. So like I alluded before, we had no co-ops. We had very few outside lessons, very few extracurriculars. I'm coming from a large family, single income family. That just wasn't realistically part of the budget, and it wasn't realistically what my parents were able to commit to as far as transportation. I will say, when I was a kid, I just dreamed of having dance lessons. I had friends who did ballet, and I would try on their shoes when I visited their house, and I loved the idea of dance lessons. But that just wasn't a reality for our family, and I'm fine. I was never going to be a prima ballerina anyways. We did do some occasional outside lessons. At one point, we lived next door to a retired lady who taught piano in her home. So I would walk next door and have piano lessons with her once a week, and that was fun. She has remained a family friend to this day. I also did drama and acting competitions in high school through a local school that allowed homeschoolers to be part of their extracurricular activities. So I would walk myself to the weekly drama practices, and I would go to the auditions, get the roles, learn my parts. I had a lot of fun with that in high school. I'm really glad I was able to be a part of that. But extracurriculars did not play a huge part in our homeschool. So a few of us did things. My brother did Boy Scouts. So a few of us did some things, but it wasn't like a big part of our week or a huge priority in our family. Next, projects. I wanted to discuss the way we approach projects. I would say that in some ways, my family's homeschool was a bit minimalist, yet it was very rigorous. Academics were very highly prioritized in our family. You know, we weren't slacking off on academics, but also my mom didn't just add stuff just to add stuff. She wasn't adding on extra creative projects and assigning us to do big things. Like you'll hear about a lot of projects these days, like design a business or, you know, plan a vacation or, you know, create a family newspaper as all these fun activities in curriculum or great project-based learning for kids. And I think my mom did basically none of that. I mean, she had 7 kids to manage, so it was really much more about, you know, here's what we need to do, let's get it done, and don't need to add on this frou-frou stuff, which maybe it's not frou-frou, but, you know, kind of the extra projects, the science experiments. It just wasn't a huge priority for her to schedule or assign to us. However, what I will say is we did that stuff almost constantly. That was largely through my own just energy and instigation. So we did have a family newspaper that I would collect articles from my siblings, and I would design it on our computer and put their articles and their poems in it. I would write plays, and I would corral all my siblings into practicing them and performing them for our siblings and for our grandparents. We built an elaborate dollhouse out of cardboard and made furniture out of recycled things. We did science experiments. We created interesting recipes. We were very busy and very constantly having projects. And if you hear a connecting theme through many of those projects, yes, I was the ringleader, and I was getting all of my team of siblings to be part of my army in creating these projects because I'm an oldest child, and that is my ringleader personality. But so looking back, you know, a lot of what we did, I have seen those exact sorts of things as ideas on Instagram for your homeschool. Do this cool project, do this cool craft, or I've seen them literally listed in our curriculum. Hey, create a family newspaper as a writing project idea. But these were not things that our mom was like scheduling or planning or creating some idea of, we're going to practice these handicrafts, we're going to do this experiment. These were largely not led by my mom. They were largely led by me and also my siblings. They also had their own ideas. We would work together to create whatever we dreamed up. So that was a little bit interesting to me, and I think different from a lot of what I see promoted in homeschool was that my mom was just more minimally planning, hey, here's your academics. This is what you're going to do. These are the books you're going to complete. But we as the kids were taking our learning independently further into very creative projects and creating our own thing and building a lot of skills while doing so. But it wasn't seen as part of school. This is just what we did once we finished our school. And I don't know, maybe probably a lot of you from this same generation of 90s and 2000s, that's just what kids did, you know? We didn't finish schoolwork and then veg out. We finished schoolwork and we're like, okay, now the fun begins. We can do all this creative stuff that we've been just dreaming up. Next is curriculum. Now I've been told sometimes here on YouTube, or I've gotten comments like, oh, you know, hey, if you were homeschooled and then you went to college and did very well, it must be because you used like the best curriculum and very, very high quality curriculum. And I want to say, like, guys, don't give the curriculum so much credit. I was homeschooled a while ago. We didn't have all that many options for curriculum. Some of the curriculum I used, I would say, is very good. You've heard me sing the praises of Sunlight. You've heard me sing the praises of things like Winston Grammar. Some of the curriculum I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. So Looking back, especially high school math, I would say was probably my worst curriculum experience. I am very good at learning. I'm very good at teaching myself. When it came to Abeka high school math textbooks, they were not designed to be used without any instructor. So they were not really designed for a homeschool setting where just a homeschooled teenager can open the book, look at the book, and teach themselves Algebra 2 and geometry and trig and calculus. And that's what I was trying to do in high school, and it was not super fun, but I did it. I went through all of those courses, figured it out somehow. Not that great. I don't feel like my high school math experience was great. Because of that, I was actually the only one of my siblings that used those books because it was such a bad experience. Normally, we always tried to recycle books, you know, use them for the next kid. That saves a lot of money. But for that, actually, we switched. My next siblings used teaching textbooks for their high school courses. Mom also wasn't super happy with the experience with those. That was back when teaching textbooks just had the CDs. Then what she moved on to from there was Matthew C. as well as Life of Fred for high school math, and that's what my youngest high school sisters have done, and that's probably been the best option so far. I don't know yet what I'm going to use for high school with my sons. We will see. Stay tuned for that adventure. But so looking back, like there is some curriculum that I have very fond feelings for, especially, you know, lying in bed, reading all those great and challenging Sunlight books, especially 100, 200, 300, all those levels are just fantastic. The high school levels of Sunlight, very fond memories, and also earlier levels, listening to my mom read aloud. So I have fond memories of some curriculum, and I have not so fond memories of some other curriculum. But to some extent, and I want to encourage you, like it kind of feels like it didn't matter to a large extent, because what I got out of homeschool was the character and the ability to learn and to focus and to do my work. So even though, say, maybe I didn't have a great math education, actually I did fantastic on the SAT and the ACT math skills tests. Actually, I went to college statistics and I got a perfect score on everything. It was so easy to learn math once I actually had a teacher and I actually had better resources. I was like, oh, math is not actually hard. But of course, that is for me, who is able to learn easily. That's my own experience that, you know, hey, you know, even if you don't have the best curriculum or you don't have the best resources, and we were somewhat limited in some of our resources back then, you know, that the resources don't have to limit you. How many people throughout history have had limited resources and have still been able to learn and have still been able to do really amazing things? So I think today people can overstress about having the best math curriculum that's going to make their kids love math. And I'm like, I don't know, to me, I had a terrible math curriculum. I did not enjoy it, but I still don't really have bad feelings about math. And I think I'm good at math, and I can probably learn anything I want to in math if I have a decent resource. Next, something people are very curious about is college. You know, can a homeschooled student go to college? What's the transition like into college? So I graduated a little bit early. I graduated at 16. So during my senior year, I did the college applications, I did the scholarship applications, and I ended up being awarded enough scholarships that it could cover a full ride, basically covered all my tuition and covered all of my books as well for college, which hugely impacts the college experience. I am very aware of the privilege of that. To be able to go to college without stressing about the finances is huge. Now, scholarships did not cover living expenses, so, you know, where I was living or a car or food. So for the first half of my college experience, for the first 5 semesters, I actually lived with my grandparents, and I brown bagged it, brought my brown bag lunch to school each day. That was how my living expenses were covered, because the rest of my school expenses were covered through scholarships. So I was a slightly younger college student. I was just barely turned 17 right when I started college. And I also was moving away from my family, was living away from my parents for the first time, although I was living with my grandparents, which was very nice. You know, there were definitely challenges about being away from my family, being away from my home at such a young age. that was stressful. There were tears. It was hard to make that move at that age. And that is one of the reasons that I don't necessarily lean towards kids graduating early if it means that they have to move out, which our family had a unique situation because my parents lived overseas. I wanted to go to college in the US, so it did mean that I had to leave my siblings, I had to leave my parents at 17, at barely 17. So that is maybe one thing that I think as a parent, I probably would try to arrange our life so that kids were not moving out at 17 years old, just because that is tough. And, you know, I did it. I was fine in the end. There were some tears. It was a little bit hard. I am actually very grateful for the time I had living with my grandparents, the conversations I got to have with them. Like, there were hard things about it. It was not always fine and dandy happy during that, especially first year. I would say the freshman year was the more emotional one. And then by sophomore year, I was like, okay, I got this. I'm in the groove much more. But that stress of re-entering America, being 17, starting college all at the same time was a little tough. However, the academics were totally fine. As far as academics in college, I loved my college experience. And as I got to know professors and as I looked around at my classmates around me, I realized very quickly that I was far better prepared academically and as far as how to manage a workload, how to learn what I needed to learn. I realized very quickly that I was much more capable to do this work than most of my siblings, most of whom would have come from a private or a public school background. Now, my husband went to the exact same college that I did. He came from a public school background. He went to a public school in California, then came to the same college. He had a very different experience. He was going into a nursing program, so when he was brand new at the school and in the nursing prereqs that he was taking, he very quickly realized he felt very far behind most of his classmates, which in his program, most of his classmates were probably coming from a private school background and were probably coming from a little bit higher income level, probably a more educated family background. So he felt very behind. He felt like he didn't know how to learn nearly at the same level that his classmates did. So he says, looking back on his college experience, that it wasn't really until junior year where he really felt caught up to his classmates and where he felt like, okay, you know, like now I know what I'm doing. And it really wasn't until junior year. Now, he ended up graduating college, getting his degree as well, but academically it was a much harder, slower pace for him, and he needed a lot more help. He was coming from a public school background where he'd done fine in public school, not top of his class or anything, but he had done fine, not a bad student. He just was not prepared for the workload of college based on his public school background. I was coming from homeschool, and I was coming from a rigorous homeschool with parents who had expectations that here's your work, you're going to do your work, we're not going to slack off. And I came into college, and I was like, what are you classmates doing? It seems like you don't know how to handle this workload. This is easy. I was being paired with classmates for group projects, and I was like, this work that you're wanting to put, we're trying to do a group paper, and the paragraphs you're sending me are junk. Like, I was actually a bit bewildered by how unprepared for college many of my classmates seemed. And I did go to a college that was, it is a private college. It is a bit more of an expensive college. So a lot of these were, you know, so these classes may have been more challenging. This wasn't like a community college. But yeah, my experience with the transition from homeschool to college was that homeschool makes college look easy. And actually, some of my siblings said the exact same thing about their college classes as well. So I met my husband on my first day of college. Actually, it was not love at first sight or anything like that. But I got married in my junior year of college, 1 week before final exams, actually, because that's the kind of decisions that 19-year-old me would make. So I spent my first half of college roughly living with my grandparents, and my second half of college I was married. So I absolutely loved the college experience. Because I had scholarships, the scholarships would cover the full tuition up to 18 credits. And I wasn't taking a super demanding major that required a ton of credits, which meant I had leftover credits to play with. So I did probably something that's kind of crazy for a lot of college students is I would just take extra classes that didn't count for anything for my major. So I took a lot of writing classes, I took performance classes, and I took language classes. So I took additional classes on performance and public speaking. And I also took classes on writing, historical fiction, research, that type of writing, as well as Spanish classes were some of just the extra classes I took just because, hey, you know, if I can take 18 credits, I might as well take 18 credits and fill out what this scholarship is worth paying for. So I will admit I probably had an odd view of college. I'm so glad I got to have that experience. Straight out of college, as soon as I graduated, I was very young. My husband and I were still very young. He was in grad school at the time, and I was kind of like, I should do something to keep me busy. I actually went to beauty school, cosmetology school, and I got my cosmetology license straight out of college. Retrospectively, looking back at that decision, I kind of think, knowing what I know now, I probably would have done something different, although, hey, I give really good haircuts. I'm good at coloring hair. To this day, I have used those skills quite a lot in my everyday life. So I wouldn't say it's quite a regret, although I probably would have done something differently. I think when I look back at my own experience of education, homeschool, growing up, college, kind of the biggest thing I wish would have been different is I wish I would have known what I wanted to do with my life when I was 16, 17. And I feel like that's something probably many of us can relate to, that when you're 16, 17, you don't really know what you want to do with the rest of your life. Some of you guys do have amazing and specific dreams and specific career goals from a very young age, and that is amazing. The most distinct career goal or dream I've ever had has been since I was about 8 years old. I always wanted to be a writer, and that's what I would always answer, that I wanted to be a writer. Now, my grandpa told me I should be an astronaut. My parents told me I should be an engineer. I was always saying I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't really know what that looked like. I had visions of sitting in a cabin in the woods, just writing completely alone, nobody to bother me. Now, in my everyday life today, I am a mother to multiple wild small children. I get to educate them every day, and I actually have a business where I develop curriculum for homeschoolers. And I've tried various different writing things. I have had various writing contracts, writing jobs. I've been published in a couple of places, online and in print over the years in different genres. What I've actually discovered is really where my heart is in writing is in curriculum development. I love curriculum development. I think I have quite a bit of skill and talent for it and quite a bit of experience now after several years of developing curriculum. So part of me wishes, you know, hey, if I could go back, I would have told young Rachel, hey, you're gonna love curriculum development. That is going to be what really sets your heart on fire within your dream of writing. It still is within your dream of writing. So how about you take some classes focused on that? Or maybe after your bachelor's, maybe go straight for a master's and get a master's in curriculum development, because that'll look really good later on when you're writing to have those letters behind your name. So I don't have the letters behind my name, but as a homeschooler, I also realize, hey, sometimes it's not the letters that matter, but it is the skill and the passion and the experience. So I would say that is my regret. And that's probably the regret for many, that we don't know what the rest of our life will look like, or necessarily what our lifelong passion will be when we're a teenager making those big decisions for our life. I'm glad with the educational experiences I got to have. I am very glad with the maybe somewhat winding road that led me to what I do today. I love the life I get to have. I'm so grateful that I met my husband at a young age in college, that we got to grow up together, that we are raising our kids together, and that I get to have this business where I get to help impact many homeschools around the world by creating quality curriculum. So that is my homeschool story, my reflection on how that experience shaped my own view of education and shaped my view of life. I hope that this is helpful for you if you are in the early stages or beginning to think about homeschool and wondering what that individual journey might look like. If you are a second-gen homeschooler, share a little bit of your story below. What might be some of your biggest takeaways or your biggest regrets from your own educational journey? I want to hear. I'll see you next time. Bye.